Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight, and when you're invading the home of a blind man who is very dangerous, screaming is one of the things you shouldn't do. Also, you shouldn't breathe, as the hit documentary that just came out, Don't Breathe, told us. We're going to be talking
Someone
about that
also
today.
should be breaking into the house of a blind man, but hey.
Okay, first things first, sure. This is Screams After Midnight, as I said. I'm Peter. I'm joined as always with the resident Professor Tim Vergulish.
Thank you as always for having me.
Ooh.
I'm drinking out of a mug that says "I love cats," just for anyone who's can't read the
'Cause
text.
Because the stereotype needed to continue.
Aye, well, you know. Also, that third voice that you're not usually hearing on this show is Matt, because he does 1.21 gigawatts, but he happened to see this movie and thought, I'm going to invade.
That's right.
Like Nazi Germany into Poland.
Not like that. More like the Allies into German-occupied France. Thank you.
I don't recall inviting you here. That makes you like Nazi Germany.
I for one could not be more thrilled. I am very pumped to finally have like an intelligent, interesting conversation about horror movies on this show. So I'm tickled pink, to be quite honest.
Oh man, shots fired.
Sure.
I feel like now I have to mediate between you two. 'Cause you're like an old married couple. You're both wearing red. For those that are listening on audio, they're both wearing red shirts. I'm not making this up. Go to YouTube, search Screams After Midnight, and look for yourself.
Oh dear. Everything Matt said was nonsense because we don't have audio versions anymore. But
So you know how much I stay in the loop, guys.
Some people might turn it on and then go into the other room and listen to it that way. You don't know.
That's true, but I mean, if that's how they're listening to it, they don't need directions on how to get to YouTube.
It's true, because you're already there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do talk about the movie that I said we were going to talk about eventually. Don't Breathe is a new film starring Jane Levy and the director of Evil Dead, which is a very good reboot, which I was pleasantly surprised by a couple of years ago when it hit. Really like that a lot. So this, like I said, the plot of this one is a group of thieves break into a house looking for the money that they believe is contained within, but the house happens to belong to Stephen Lang, aka the Blind Man, which is what he's credited as. We've not forgotten his name, that's what he's called in the credits, the Blind Man. And he turns out to be very, very dangerous. He is like the villain of the movie, and of course it's called Don't Breathe because he uses the sound to detect where people are, so... That's the movie. We will start off spoiler free as we always do, and we will give you warning before spoilers. And yeah, let's get into it. I shall begin simply by saying this was great.
I'll echo that sentiment. I liked it a lot. It was really good at building tension. It is a very tense movie.
It was. I think I've got a couple of little complaints, but for the most part, once it got going, once they got in that house, it was basically exactly what it should have been for the rest of the movie, and it did legit have some surprises. There's a big thing that happens, of course, about halfway through, which we can't talk about until spoilers. But I want to applaud them for not even hinting at that in the trailer. Like,
No.
none of that.
If there's ever been a movie to where I switch allegiances halfway through, it was this one. Because when that's revealed, you're just like, well, actually, I'm not going to switch sides. I am rooting for no one. I am rooting for an asteroid or a propane leak.
To be fair, like I think out of the thieves, there's only one that's actually like unsympathetic, in every possible way.
But they're still ripping off a blind guy. Like,
True.
You know.
I'd kind of go the opposite. I'd say there was only one that I actually felt sympathy for. There's one that was like obviously like, all right, this is the jerky guy, and then no, this isn't a spoiler. I'll just say Jane Levy, whatever.
Levi, like the jeans, Tim, like the jeans.
Yeah, okay. Her character, who I enjoy her a great deal, and I liked her in this movie. Okay. You make it sound like I know her or something.
You might. I don't know.
You live in Hollywood, Tim.
Yeah, you're in LA. I mean, why not?
But no, I thought she was really great. But her character, like, I feel like maybe you're supposed to be a little more sympathetic than I was towards her. But she was the person that I felt like kind of kept making the wrong moves. Like, she was the one I was screaming, like, no, don't do that.
Well, but you need that in a horror movie.
You need that person, but it works really hard to give her the motivation to be doing what she's doing, and you sort of buy that she's not thinking straight because she sees this light at the end of the tunnel, because this is in the trailer. She has really crappy parents, and she has this little sister who she looks after. She's essentially the parent to this girl, and she wants to move to another city with her. She wants to go to California.
Just get out of Detroit.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Do you know, every movie I see set in Detroit tells me to never go to Detroit. Is that accurate? Is that, yeah?
Yeah.
At work, I had, we're in a meeting once, and I had, like, my boss and a couple other people on my team were talking about how they had to attend, like, a conference in Detroit once or something. And my boss said when he got to the hotel, after he checked in, he was like, "Oh, is there like any places to eat? I'm gonna like walk around and get something to eat." And it was probably like 7 or 8 at night. And the guy at the hotel was like, "No, you can't leave. You like it. If you go outside, you will be like mugged
it's like the
or something."
Purge.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how accurate it is. I mean, maybe I doubt the whole city's like that. Maybe just the particular area he was in. But the place he was in was.
Let's
not
just
nice.
say that RoboCop statue already got stolen.
I will say this. I guess. I mean, I wouldn't count this as a spoiler, but I will say I was disappointed that RoboCop didn't show up at the end of this to save the day.
Yeah.
You know, like I was hoping. I thought it was a chance.
I mean, it definitely looks
disappointed in a lot of
post-apocalyptic.
movies.
Well, because it was set in Detroit, Timmy. I don't go into every. I didn't go into. What was one of the last ones? Lights Out. I didn't go into Lights Out thinking, "Oh, RoboCop's going to show up and show this demon what for at the end." You know,
just clutching your little action figure in the theater, like.
Hey, RoboCop saved
talking
Sting
to a
at
stranger that like is moving like.
I love how you're cracking action figure jokes. RoboCop was like one of the hardest R-rated movies of the 80s.
Yeah, but he had a cartoon. He had action figures.
He did, sure, but I mean, come on. Like, that's not what you watch RoboCop for. You watch RoboCop for the evisceration of body parts and the splatting of humans that have been infected with acid.
And we need to call an ambulance. The guy's clearly cheeseburger meat. Like,
will someone get a paramedic in here after the guy's been turned to mush? No. Will someone get a sponge? That's what you really want to be asking for at that point. Anyway,
a bucket.
Yeah.
Where's that Stephen Lang guy from? I don't think I really know him from
You'll
anything
know him
else.
from Avatar, maybe. He was a villain in Avatar.
Oh, right.
He's popped up in a few things as well, but that's probably the biggest thing.
He always plays like a military gruff guy.
To be fair, though, that's exactly what it looks like. He looks that part.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever really seen him play a good guy, because even if he plays a good guy, he edges towards that line. So...
I thought he was great in this. He was,
he was
like exactly what you wanted to be. Almost like a, you know what it kind of reminded me of, Pete. I think you'll appreciate this, but kind of reminded me of like a video game boss, almost like Nemesis from Resident Evil 3 or something. Like one of those things where you kind of like you always think you're away from him, and then he just kind of peers around the corner, and then you got to like find like a hiding space or something.
Do you know what I really liked about his performance? Because last week we talked about Tales from the Crypt, the Tales from the Crypt movie from 1972, and one of the shorts in that was about a group of blind men, and I criticised it a little bit because I felt like all the actors didn't always feel like they were really blind. Like, you know, like their hands were reaching for things where they weren't really... You know, like, you expect them to like move around their hand a bit to find things, but it looked like they were just reaching for things directly, and, you know, there was a lot of little things that tells that they weren't really blind. I thought Stephen Lang did a really great job in this of convincing me that he was both blind but at the same time very dangerous.
Yeah, he was a threat.
Yeah.
Like, he's like a force of nature. So I don't get the Resident Evil ref, but I get that you can't. Once he gets going, there wasn't really any gonna stop him.
Yeah.
Unless all three guys were dead.
And the fun thing about it as well is, and this played into the horror, is like because it relied so much on sound. There was so many moments where characters were hiding like a foot away from him, or just like round the corner or whatever, but they couldn't walk because the creaking floorboards. They tried to hold their breath, so they couldn't. And that's maybe an obvious thing when you look at the title of the movie, but it actually makes for some really good moments because it's almost like I'm trying to like in like a monster movie where they're hiding in a cupboard, but the monster's right outside the cupboard. Whereas this has to do it all the time because the way this guy works entirely is sound.
Yeah.
It's like the raptor scene in Jurassic Park, but for the full movie in the kitchen.
Another thing I really like about it as well is the scene, which is in the trailer. I'm not spoiling anything but mentioning this.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a scene where it's entirely set in the dark, and we can see what's going on because they've put like a special, it's not quite like a typical night vision, but it's, we can see what's going on. But it's, again, I knew that was coming, but it was still really effective because it was like, oh, he's not even just even the playing field, he's put it in his advantage because he's used to being blind. Yeah. Like, this is his day every day.
Well, and he knows the house. Like, they're blind and have no idea. And, so he's double advantaged it. It also, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but that happens earlier than I thought it was going to too. Like, in the trailer, that seems like a second act break thing. Like, that's the
end of towards the end of the movie, yeah.
Yeah, like Tim was saying, like a boss battle type thing, where this is how you ramp it up, and once they make it out of there, they're in the clear. But this happened pretty early, which I thought was cool. Because it took me off balance.
There were some good surprises. And Joe, I liked as well, because Tim mentioned how he would keep popping up. Mm-hmm. Every time he popped up, it didn't feel cheap. Every single time, I could say, he popped up because he could hear this. Or he popped up because, there was always a legit reason for why he popped up. It wasn't just the filmmakers going, oh no, we need to pop him up now for a scare. It was genuine. It was like logic dictated that he should pop up. Now, I mean, I'm sure you could sit and pick it apart and go, well, would the blind man really move that fast, or would the blind man know this, or whatever. I feel like there's a level of authenticity to how he reacts to the noises that I can live with.
He's not just a blind man. He was special forces in the military. Yeah. So that's another level of it, that he has training in addition to being blind.
Yeah.
You know what it kind of reminded me of? This might be kind of like a weird comparison, but it kind of reminded me of like a really good like improv show or something. And by that I mean like when you like some of the improv classes I've taken, there's kind of a thing you do where when you're doing a scene, you try to find kind of like what the game is. They call it, and I guess that's kind of like, what's funny or interesting about the characters. And then once you find that game, you just keep heightening it until like, you kind of, get as much out of it as you can. And that's what it kind of felt like to me. Like they have kind of this game, that they're doing, and they just keep heightening it. And, and like, the stakes just keep increasing. Yeah. And I thought it just did really good of just, it's not one note, it's not just, this very simple premise just blah out there in the opening. Like they find ways to make it interesting and keep developing it further and further.
Well, see, if you go back to a movie we did recently, I mentioned Lights Out earlier, right? We talked about that, and we said that movie was ultimately very disappointing because it didn't really live up to its premise. Because that movie had this whole thing where the monster couldn't step into the light. So we were saying how it felt, at one point it almost felt like they were setting up like a Home Alone type thing where they were going to booby trap the whole house with lights. But they didn't really do that, and they didn't really play with it or have fun with it. Whereas this, it feels like, oh no, they sat down and thought, what are all the things we could do with a villain who's blind, and it all relies on sound. There's various different things, and of course we should mention he has a dog who's like vicious.
Yeah, I was gonna say, blind and a vicious Rottweiler.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like we mentioned on Lights Out too, something we both enjoy. Matt, I'm not sure how you feel about this, but we really like with horror movies when the ghost or the bad guy or whatever it is has some type of like rules. And this, it's not really so much rules, I guess.
Well, but it kind of is though. I mean, it's not stated as such, but it's the exact same thing. There's a clear like they can beat him if they have these certain advantages.
Yeah, like they know they have to do this, and he knows that he has to do that, whatever. And it's kind of like, yeah, all right, like, they have to think of ways to outsmart him, and he keeps thinking of ways to find them and whatnot.
Yeah, and if you're wondering, I was going to say, if you've not seen the movie yet and you're just watching the spoiler-free section, and you're wondering, wait a minute, why don't they just run out of the house? Well, because this guy's got this house locked up like a fortress. He's got bars in the windows. He's got multiple locks. Like they really set up the idea that it's not easy to get out of this place. The way they get in quickly becomes shut off, and then they're trapped.
Well, because that's what I was going to bring up. That it's when she first hides, and then he realizes that someone was here to steal the money, and then he goes into extra lockdown mode. Like, he has locks and chains on standby for something like this.
Yeah, he's like, he's almost like a blind, delusional version of Batman, almost. Where he's thought of all the outcomes, and he's like, right.
And what's great though is played the voice of Batman before too, so it fits.
Oh. What's great too is that they give you a reason too why he's so overprotective. We'll talk about it more in the spoiler section. There's actually like an actual reason for it.
Yeah, the reason why he's got this money is to do with his backstory, and it involves the death of a loved one, and you get all this stuff. So no, it's really solid stuff. Also, I like that there's a reason built into the movie why no one like hears what's going on or whatever. They set up this idea that he's the only person left in the street. All the other houses are abandoned. Which at first I thought, does this feel forced? But at the same time, the street looks like a complete dump. And I'm like, it looks abandoned.
It looks like pictures I've seen of Detroit. So like I don't want to stereotype Detroit, but like every news story I see, they use these stock images of this neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think it's totally believable that like obviously like the whole city's not like that, but I mean it could very well be that and not just in Detroit, like plenty of places throughout the U.S. or the world, but it's definitely feasible that there could be street or neighborhood or something that's like that.
Well, definitely, I know there's neighborhoods that look like that in my town. Well, in parts of Las Vegas that are just old and shuttered up.
To be fair, I think there's places like that everywhere, really. But what I like about it as well is that it actually makes sense that partly because he likes his house, he doesn't want to move out. But the other part is that he's blind. He doesn't care what the street looks like.
Yeah.
So why would
he's not looking at it.
Yeah. Why would he want to move?
And also, you see the kids breaking into like a ritzy house early on in the movie. So it definitely shows like they went out of their way to come to this neighborhood. So it's not just down the street from their house. It's this. So
Yeah. All right. Well, I think there's not much more we can say in spoiler free. So to wrap this section up, obviously we recommend seeing it. It's very, very good. I think it's kind of not ironic, but coincidental that my favourite horror movie of last year was also set in Detroit. But hey ho, and also pointed out a lot of the crappier neighbourhoods and stuff along the way. That was It Follows, in case you're wondering.
I want to say, I just thought that there might be able to have a crossover between Don't Breathe and It Follows. And I would love to watch that.
Just a ghost just chasing this blind guy that doesn't even know there's a ghost.
He doesn't even know, but he takes it out at every chance.
What, so someone has to have sex with him to pass it on?
Yeah.
But he's so good. He's so good at taking care of himself that he keeps dealing with it.
Yep.
Oh, God. Alright, so full spoilers from this point on for Don't Breathe. You have been warned.
So let's talk about turkey basters.
Oh, God. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't gag often in movies when I'm watching them.
There was something that was just gross about the way it was done. Like, there's, like, hairs.
It was... Well, all right. So let's back up.
Getting way too much glee out of this.
Let's back up and get to that point, right? So the big twist in the movie is that because his daughter was hitting a car accident, a drunk driver, I think was the exact explanation, and
his family pays off
the
lawyers and the cops,
and he has kidnapped this woman. And at first I was thinking, oh wait, how did they not check him? And I'm like, well, he's blind. I actually kind of can buy that they just assumed it wasn't him. Like,
Yeah.
because he's blind, how could he kidnap someone? But, you know, just sure enough. But he's got her down in the basement, all, like, strapped up in this weird, like, cushion, like, fort with all these pillows and, you know, couch parts all, like, around her. And she's, like, in this weird harness that holds her in place. And basically, our main characters try to escape with her, and he, like, fires shots in, not knowing that she's escaped with them yet. And turns out she's dead. And we find out, so he kidnaps Jane Levy now, once he gets a hold of her, when she's trying to escape through the vents to get out. And he ties her up, and then he explains that he had the girl that he'd kidnapped impregnated because he thought he was with a child, because his daughter was killed. So now he's going to have her do the same job. And then and then he says, I'm not a rapist. And then he goes over to like a fridge thing, and I'm like, wait, what?
No.
Where's this going?
Yeah.
And he pulls out a turkey baster and like a little like beaker of, well, he's been saving up. He's been saving up some of that prime semen, you know.
A lot, yeah. Oh man, that's the point where the movie turned. Is when they get to the end of the basement and there's a girl chained up. There was nothing to point at that was happening, and it was such a nice shock.
Yeah.
And it becomes a different movie.
Yeah, it was like legitimately surprising. Like, you know, kind of like Pete was saying earlier, like, you know, like trailers and stuff. Like, we know so much stuff ahead of time. Most of these movies, it's, I think it's like pretty rare they get like a very legitimate shock like that.
But the funny thing is though, is that as much as we didn't see it coming, at the same time it actually works perfectly with everything that we were given beforehand, because he's got this access to the basement completely locked shut. He's very private, never goes outside. He, you know, like, everything pointed to this. He puts on tapes of his daughter, like, so he can listen to them when he goes to bed. Like, you can tell he's obsessed. You can tell he's, like, very protective of something in his house. And, you know, like...
Yeah. Well, because you think it's the money. Yeah, and then the money is locked in this tiny little safe, and you're like, well, wait. If the money's in the safe, what's in the basement?
Yeah.
Like, there's something down there. And I almost thought it was like a grow house for a minute, because there's all that greenery, and there's lamps and stuff. And I was like, okay. And then, boom, the girl shows up. And she's hooked to this weird harness Pete's talking about. And the walls are all padded. And I'm like, well, this just took an odd turn. And then you find out she's pregnant.
Yeah. Well, you find out after she's been killed as well. You didn't even know that until after she's died.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure on that until he says so, when he's hooked up Jane Levy into this harness, which that scene just makes me squirm.
Yeah. Well, because not only is she hooked up, right, and she's like tied, you know, it's essentially like a sex swing almost, the way it's like got her up in the air. And he comes over.
I feel like you're not used to seeing that. It's like usually you'll see him like chained to the wall or like in a cage or something. Yeah. There's a weird like helplessness when you're kind of just dangling from the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he comes up with like scissors and he like cuts a hole in her like crotch so he can get the turkey baster in. And it's just kind of like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. And she's like screaming for her life, and like, and at this point as well, we think that Alex is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had a fight with the blind man, and it turned out that he actually used the corpse of Money, who was already dead.
Yeah.
To take
such a great reveal too, because you see Alex fight, and he could have gone, but he goes back for Jane Levy or for Rocky, and he gets into this fight with the blind man, and it almost looks like he's gonna make it out, and the blind man picks up like what were they, gardening shears?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And plunges them into him, and you just see, that's it. The blind man gets up, goes back down to his business.
Do you know what I liked about Alex's character, actually? I liked that he was very conscious of exactly what laws they were breaking. Like, as soon as the gun showed up, he wanted out. He's like, no, that's like 10 years now of like prison if we get caught.
Well, he goes, no, you're taking this. It's already grand larceny because we're stealing over X amount of money. And now you're turning it into armed robbery. Like, that's not cool. I'm out.
Yeah, plus he says it's like it's now legal for him to shoot us in defense because you have a gun in your hand.
Yeah.
You know,
stand your ground laws.
So
he was actually very smart and like a guy that he's not that typical like horror movie guy that you're yelling at the screen like, no, don't do that, you idiot. It's like, oh no, this guy actually makes sense and he's actually smart. And at one point he leaves and you're like, oh, like that's again maybe not the most Yeah, not
And
the most entertaining thing to do, but
but it made sense for the character, and it
Yeah.
worked that he went back because he obviously cares for Rocky. Like they
Yeah.
see
Yeah,
this
that was-
idea that he has feelings for her, so he goes back to help. And
I thought that cemented like a good little like character thing for their relationship. Those two, like you could tell, like oh yeah, he's gonna come back. You know, he really likes her.
and at one point, Money literally just refers to her as his bitch, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
you're clearly here to be the one who like shows how badass the guy is by dying quickly,
Yeah.
and I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Like I'm
Because
perfectly
they
okay
show
with that.
that in the trailer. That's part of the hook of the movie.
Yeah.
Now the
Yeah.
other two are stuck because this guy went and popped off, and you know, but yeah. So when Alex finally does die, after he's come back and played the hero, it hurts so much more.
And it's a
Yeah.
good moment
And,
as
you
well
know,
because it's
yeah.
because you think they're out. You think like they've gotten
Yeah.
to that front door, they're opening it, and you know, blind man's gotten outside, and he's there.
And that's the thing. He's like a force of nature because he was chained up at that point when they free him up, and we'll go back to the turkey baster because that ends up.
Back to the turkey baster. So he's about to shove it in poor Jane Levy, and Alex jumps in, saves the day, and they tie him up. But Jane Levy grabs the turkey baster full of his semen
Yeah.
and rams it into his mouth as hard as she can,
Oh,
and then
And gives it a squeeze.
gives it a squeeze, and then. But the worst part of it all, the whole thing is when he spits out the turkey baster, he then spits out a bit of the liquid as well, and you see it coming out of his mouth, and I gagged just a bit.
that was one of the bigger groans I've heard in a theater in a
Yep.
long while.
Oh god.
I also heard at the theater I went to, a lady behind me goes, "That's what you get," which that was quite entertaining. Usually I'm not for talking during a movie, but in something that is this tense, it's
Yeah.
nice to break the tension that way. Like when I went and saw Drive and the elevator scene happens, I had to have a laugh because I needed to break the tension somehow. So, you know, and that was, you know, needed throughout Don't Breathe because it's so well directed that way.
Yeah. Geez, that moment.
Yeah.
But so obviously, Alex opens the door. He gets shot, and Jane does make it outside, and she gets a little bit cocky. She says, "What can you do out here? Like, what are you out here?" And then of course the dog, comes
Which
after
we've
her.
forgotten about. The dog that went through the vents to get her.
We,
Like,
we basically get a 5-minute reenactment of Cujo, where she's in the car and the dog's like trying to get in.
Yeah.
And this is
Oh,
where
that
she,
wa-
and she gets really smart here. Like she does like a little plan, and she like traps the dog in the boot, or sorry, the trunk for you Americans.
I was really, really relieved that she was able to do that without killing the dog. Like, I'm so happy anytime the dog doesn't die in a horror movie. And then in this, if anything, it would have been kind of justified because the dog was kind of part of the bad guy, but not that it's his fault. I'm sure he's raised that way, but she actually found a humane solution to take care of him.
Yeah, no.
well, yeah, I just, when that dog jumped into the vents like that, too, I was just like, oh, great. All right, well, game over. Like, he has every contingency planned.
Do you know the thing was, is like, see during this scene, see when she like sort of sighs a breath of relief, I knew he was about to show up because that dog was constantly barking. He knows where to go.
Yeah.
Like they justify how he knows to find her out here.
Yeah.
And that leads us back.
Also, when
I was gonna say that leads us back to the opening shot because the opening thing we see in the movie is him dragging her up the street, and that
which I
up.
forgot about until that happened again, and went, oh yeah, of course, great. How's she gonna get out of this one? Which is what you always want in a movie like this, like, because if it's too simple, it doesn't feel earned, and if it's too difficult, they don't have a chance. But here, for every 2 steps she makes forward, there's 3 backwards.
Yeah.
So, and the way that he punches too is so brutal, because he punches her out a couple times. Like, I am sure she is concussed multiple times.
Oh yeah, like she's got like
movie.
big bruises on her face. Like they make it very clear this guy is, he's not holding back.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like the way that it's directed, it's just like I watch MMA occasionally, And I don't mind violence, but like this was just rough.
But
Do you know when I think a movie really has you though? It's when you go, oh crap, this is about to happen, and then it's not any less entertaining for it. And I'm thinking of like early on when he doesn't know there's other people in the house, he thinks he's killed the one person, but then he finds the shoes, and he feels the different set of shoes. Like that moment, like when you realize you know what he's about to do. He's about to touch them. He's about to know. And he's about to go into lockdown mode, and it's just like you clench up and you know it's about to happen. Let's talk a little bit about the scene in the darkness in the basement, because you want to talk about good directing. One of the things that I really loved down in that scene is they really established that the field of vision was really narrow, because the camera is on the blind man and it backs away and he just fades into the darkness.
Yep.
And it really sets this idea up that they could be like only a few feet away from each other and not see each other. And again, for us, now that we were looking at through the camera, he could just appear out of the darkness at any moment here. And there is one great moment where like one of them's reaching over and they almost touch him.
Yeah, and it makes you do that where you're clenching in your seat because, and they can't yell out. Which anytime there's darkness, you want to yell out for your friend, and they can't because then that's going to give away, their position.
Yeah.
So they're, again, we talked about it earlier, they're doubly screwed.
And it's like every little thing they're doing as like they're trying to like feel their way along the wall and stuff, and they're touching little like paint cans or utensils or something that's like making noise, and like every bit of noise is like they're trying to avoid.
Yeah. No, very great stuff. So obviously the movie, and she eventually gets out. She rings the alarm, and that's another thing they set up really well is the idea that this remote, because obviously Alex has set up that his father works for the security company in the city that's done a lot of these houses, so he has like access codes and keys and things like that to a lot of these things, and that's how they get into these houses. And he's brought this remote so that you can like turn the alarm on or off from a distance. But right at the start of the movie, when Jane Levy sneaks into the house and she has to turn the alarm off, they set up very clearly what the range is. Because you see her walk over and you see how far away from it she is when it finally works. So later on in the movie, when she's desperately trying to get it to turn on so that the police will come, it's like, absolutely great. And another thing I want to bring up as well is I love the moral quandary that comes up where they want to get him caught because what he's doing is like evil, like just downright evil.
Yeah.
But she has to make the question, well, if we get him caught, they'll probably just let us go because, what's worse, but I'm not going to get to keep the money. And she has to make that choice. And I like that.
Yeah, that was like the one little bit of like trouble I kind of had feeling sympathy for her character is like I know she needs the money to take was it her sister or her daughter?
I think it was a sister, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so needs to get him and move away from her like abusive parents and stuff.
See, I feel like for the longest time she did always choose the money, but I think there was a point where she did accept, like, no, I want him caught, but then she just took it and ran when she realised she had a chance to get out anyway.
Yeah.
I feel like there was an arc there where she did decide, no, like, it's more important to get this guy caught.
Yeah.
And that's good. It's good that a character has an arc like that. But the ending actually leaves it open for a sequel because we think he is dead. It seems like he probably died. And we see Jane Levy and her sister at the bus station. They're going to go to California. They're all happy. And then she sees on the news that the police have not found the secret basement area.
Yeah.
And we know he had bodies under the floor in the basement, so you'd have to go looking. You'd have to be suspecting something probably to find those. And it reveals that he didn't die. He's actually still alive. He's a survivor. And it ends on this really somber note. It's like, if we want to do a sequel, he's still out there.
Well, and the news also spins it as these two young punks try to rob a blind veteran.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, well, clearly no one went in. Like, going again to no one suspects the blind guy.
Exactly, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he looks like the victim.
He's evil Matt Murdock, basically. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what's great about it as well? Is I actually kind of like the idea of what they could do with a sequel almost. Like, let's say it keeps the same character, but he wants revenge, right? Because why wouldn't he at this point? You know, he's out for blood. Like, the idea of taking it outside of the house, and how does he become a threat when he's hunting her outside? Like, traveling to her house.
It's like reverse Taken.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know? Like, so I actually think there's interesting things you could do with that. Would it work? Would it not? I don't know, but like, I'm open to the idea if they come up with something.
Yeah, especially if it's the same creative team.
Yeah, they did a great job. Really, really enjoyable. So, and as Matt's dogs decide to interrupt the show. You don't know this, but Matt's dog's actually stunt doubled for the Rottweiler in Don't Breathe.
Matt's actually being robbed as we speak.
Yeah, no. Just a neighbor. Just a neighbor.
Now, I guess that leads us to ratings.
There's one other thing I do want to say before we do
sorry,
that.
Tim. Sorry, I don't mean to impede on the professor's lecture. By all means, do tell.
All right, well, it's probably going to make it sound like more important than it is, but I just want to say I also like the scene where like Alex falls on the glass. He falls through the window and then he's laying on the glass ceiling. I don't know. I was always like those like tense moments when it's not like they do a ton of movies, but there are movies of scenes where people are like falling on glass and it starts cracking. I always think that's a good. But
there's an extra layer to it here because it's not just about the glass cracking and possibly breaking. It's about the sound of it cracking because he'll know that where he is.
Yep. Exactly. So. And also at that point it's like, oh, you're out of the house.
Like you can roll off this. Yeah. If you just roll quickly, you can get out of this building and like run off into the night. Yeah.
I guess I didn't think about it as much watching the movie, but talking about it with you guys, like Alex really gets put through the ringer. Like he's
he does.
Obviously the nicest guy, and he probably gets it the worst throughout the movie.
Yeah, he does. Actually, before we wrap up, I probably should see if I have any criticisms. I really only have one, if I'm honest, and it's not a big deal. I do think the opening 10 minutes is maybe just a little bit rushed. I feel like they wanted to get to the house as quickly as possible. So I could have done with maybe not a lot, but 5 more minutes just to give it a bit more breathing room. No pun intended.
More
you're not supposed to.
Money being a dirtbag.
Yeah,
so you really get the vibe.
Yeah, that just interesting. Because I feel like the whole idea that Alex's dad is the security guy, I feel like they shoehorned it into as quick a possible moment as possible.
Yeah.
It just felt a little bit quick, but it wasn't that big deal. It was because they knew obviously that once he gets to the house, that's where the movie really begins.
Yeah.
So. Also, if I have one criticism, it's not really the movie's fault, but that song "Don't Speak" by No Doubt.
Oh no, Tim.
It's just for some reason, whenever I hear the title, I always imagine that song, but with "Don't Breathe" instead of "Don't Speak." I don't know. I won't sing it for you guys, but that's something
I think we're owed a rendition of "Don't Breathe" by Tim Vargulish.
Don't breathe. No, I don't even know. I don't know how that song really goes. I was like, "Don't speak. I know just what you're saying."
That's not important.
Breathe,
no, that's in my head.
Just
so
what
thanks.
you say.
All right, let's stop this. Let's stop this right now. We don't want YouTube's copyright system to pick up on your pitch perfect rendition of the song.
Although Gwen, if you're watching, what's up?
Oh yeah, Matt will leave his wife in a heartbeat, Gwen.
Oh no, I'm just saying, what's up? Big fan. That's all.
To a guy named Glenn?
No, it's Gwen.
Gwen.
Oh, Gwen. Oh, that makes sense.
It makes sense to me.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Tim. That's why he's the professor, ladies and gents.
Professor Magoo, which actually is a very apt reference since what we're talking about. So yeah, ratings, or as we call it, biscuits out of 10. thanks to The Conjuring 2. Yes. Yeah. Matt, you're the irregular person here. You give us your rating first.
So I don't watch nearly as much horror as you guys. So when I do, it tends to usually be something that's pretty good. So I'm going to give this a solid 8.5 out of 10.
Cool. Professor, what what grade does this paper get?
I'm kind of floating around the same area. I think that's a very good score. My initial gut reaction is like a solid 8. Because it's really, really good. It's definitely not perfect though, but I feel like maybe upon like subsequent views, I could say bumping up to an 8.5. But for right now, my gut's gonna tell me 8.
Cool. 8.5 for me as well. I think, like you just said, I think on more viewings it could grow and become something a little bit higher. But I think it's incredibly solid. It's incredibly tense. Like the cast, like the direction. And I think more than anything else, what sold me on this movie is the premise. It's just a fun premise. It's a fun movie where someone said in a sentence, "What if this happens?" And and what does that do in terms of movie making? What can we do with that premise? Where the guy has to hear them, and you play with that. You play, and sound becomes such an important thing. So, no, I think yeah.
Yeah, and what I think is really cool too is this is like the director and the main star from the Evil Dead remake, which we talked about. Was it last year? I guess we did it.
Yeah, it's a while ago now. Yeah.
But yeah, we both like that.
Jane Levy needs to stay out of basements.
But we both like that a lot, and then it's cool to see that them doing their own thing and not doing like a sequel to Evil Dead or like another reboot of a horror franchise. Like, oh, they can branch out and do their own thing, and they work really well together. So I would, if they want to do their own thing, that's cool. But it'd be cool to see if they have like another idea for a cool horror movie.
Now, I don't know if there's any turkey basters in it. I don't suspect so, but Jane Levy her next movie is going to be a big horror film as well. It's about evil trucks from outer space that kill people or something. I don't know.
Well, what?
It's called Monster Trucks, Tim. Look it up. It looks terrifying. I don't know. Like it's the scariest trailer I've seen in years.
I mean, I'm sold just from that.
Trucks from outer space.
Yeah.
That's the most metal thing I've ever heard.
I'm so in.
Tim, you're aware it's a kids movie, right? Like, I'm just yanking your chain.
I didn't know that. Well, now I'm out.
Tim, watch the trailer. It might be the most Tim movie that's ever.
It is. It's basically aliens. Aliens go inside these monster trucks and control them. And Jane Levy and what's his face from X-Men?
Havoc.
Havoc. Yeah, Havoc. Yeah. They like have to like deal with the fact that these evil government conspiracy people are coming after them, and it looks
sounds a little bit like Maximum Overdrive.
It looks way more fun than it has any right to.
E.T. meets Maximum Overdrive.
Oh, I'm sold. Good.
So that's what she's in next. So that's
comes out in January. Take that as you will.
So that's Don't Breathe. Really, really good. I highly recommend it. Of course, next week we have another new release that's potentially very good because the Rotten Tomatoes right now is doing very well. And that is, of course, Blair Witch. We did the first two a couple of weeks ago. Check out that. But the new one's next week. That'll be our video next week. And of course, I can't leave this episode without giving you a little bit of a tease for the month of October.
Okay.
Tim, get your head out of the gutter. He claims he's the professor, but he's more like a 12-year-old student. It's really quite distracting at times, Timmy.
I think you got the roles reversed there, Spunky.
But yeah, so over the month of October, of course, it's Halloween month. We like to celebrate Halloween on this show. It is horror movies after all, and we are going to be pumping out a lot of extra episodes. We basically agreed we'd be doing at least 3 a week for the month of October. So
have fun, guys.
So you can look forward to a big variety of movies. There's a lot coming. We're going to make a nice celebration out of it. and hopefully you'll have fun with that, guys. Yeah, so I won't reveal what any of the movies are, although one of them's a new release, so you can guess it just based on what's coming out in October. But look forward to that. So lots of horror movies coming from the past and of course the present.
And don't forget horror TV shows coming up.
Of course. Over on the Melod Fuzz TV YouTube channel, which is our sister channel, me and Tim have started doing reviews of the old Tales from the Crypt episodes, which episode 1 went up last weekend. It goes up every weekend. Episode 2 is going up this weekend, and we're having fun doing that. I've never seen the show before, so I'm having a blast going through it for the first time. Also, of course, over there we do the up-to-date TV reviews week to week. And Ash vs Evil Dead is coming back at the end of September. Me and Tim will be doing that on a weekly basis over there. And we'll also be doing Stan Against Evil, which is a new horror comedy TV show with
Excited for that.
with Dr. Cox from Scrubs. There's a guy named Stan fighting the forces of evil.
C. McGinley.
Yeah,
And one of my favorite comedians, Dana Gould, is also on it.
all right.
Oh,
Who was in
snap.
Southbound.
Very good. Very good. Look at all what we've learned so far today.
I like Dana Gould. I'm gonna watch this now.
Yeah,
Also-
and if you haven't seen Southbound, you should definitely check that out.
Yes, that's a good movie.
I think it's on Netflix.
And we did an episode on it, so go check out our episode.
Sweet.
Plus, 121 this week, me and Matt actually did a horror comedy ourselves. We did a
Yeah.
movie called Night of the Living Dead. That'll be up already. Check that out. That's a Shaun of the Dead-esque film with a small red-headed woman, which kind of...
Marissa Thayer, I believe.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes.
And I described it
Well done,
as
Jimmy.
Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt in a zombie movie. So if that sounds
Ooh.
intriguing, check that out.
It does.
Oh,
Actually,
well,
I never heard of it before you guys did it, but I was just like at Best Buy a little earlier, and I saw the Blu-ray of it, and I was like, oh, this actually looks like good.
it was fun. So yeah. Also check out our friends Rowan's Reviews over at their website. They do written content, they do movie reviews and albums and concerts and all that kind of thing. There'll be a link in the description, so check them out. They're friends of ours. Other than that, they'll give us a like and a subscribe. It helps us out a lot. Thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you thought of Don't Breathe in the comments below. And yeah, keep watching scary movies. We'll see you next time.